Hello, I'm Daryl James. I'm running the Photoshop tutorial classes. This is one of the first beginning lessons today, showing you how to use a curve adjustment layer and a layer mask. This is the image we're going to be working on, so I have a copy of the image in this folder here, or in your email. It's called cloudstudy.jpg, so we open that with Photoshop. So you can open Photoshop and then browse for that image where you've saved it. So once we have the image open, you can see up here the name of the image is up there, and there's the image here. Here is the image. By default, Photoshop calls it background and locks the layer. It doesn't need to be like that, but it's just how it does that. It doesn't really affect what we're doing here today, but just be wary of that. It is locked, and you'll notice the other thing, it's blue. Is when you select a layer, it is blue and it's highlighted here, and there's some other buttons here that we'll touch on later. So the next thing down the bottom here, we're going to click on this little icon here. It's for creating what's called an adjustment layer. So if you click on that one and then go up to curves here, once you do that, you'll create a curve adjustment layer like this. A little box will pop up for the properties. You can see this little box here. And how this works is there's darker at the bottom. You can see here there's a gradated here and darker to the left. So this represents all the dark pixels on the image here. So it represents the clouds there, for example, the mountains, and this area probably here would be the clouds up here. So by moving the curve up towards the top, we're actually lightening the image. So that's what the curve adjustment layer is doing to the entire image. It's lightening it. So once we click off that, we click from properties to layer, that little tab there, or we can click on the close icon here, and we'll get back to our layers. And you'll notice now that this layer is blue and it's a new layer here, and there's the background there. You can turn the visibility of the layer on and off by hitting the eyeball. And the other thing you do, the other thing we haven't talked about yet is masks. Now, with adjustment layers, we get what's called a mask. This is a white mask right here. White mask means that it's not in effect, it's a clear piece of acetate, a clear piece of film with nothing on it. The adjustment is there, but it's going through an entire image. So the adjustment that we made, the curve back here, is going through the entire image because it's white. What we're going to talk about later and do is paint with black. So we've got two choices on a mask: paint with black and white, or shades in between. And as soon as we start painting with black, it lowers that effect, that curve adjustment, that lightening that we saw when we created the curve. By painting in black in here, it will lower that and reveal the underlying layer, which in this case is the background. So we can see here that by alt-clicking on the mask, we reveal what it looks like, and currently it's all white. So alt or option clicking on that shows the actual what the mask looks like, and you'll notice, you'll see the difference between the eyeballs. So when the eyeballs are on, you'll see your layers, but when you hit alt and you're on a mask, it's in a different column, and it's also grayed out or unselected. You'll notice when you click in this column, this here, all the things in the first column are visible. When you click in this one here, this disables the other effects, and you're looking solely at the mask in this stage. And you'll notice the brackets around it as well. There's white brackets around it. Now, when we click on that, the white brackets appear around the actual mask. Now you can click on that, and that will target your whatever you're going to do to the adjustment, which was the curve layer, which we saw before. So there's two parts to the layer. This is the actual adjustment, the adjustment layer. In this case, it was a curve, and this part is the mask. So if we want to affect the mask, we have to make sure those little white brackets are around it, and that goes with other types of adjustments as well. So here we've got that selected there, but what we're going to do In this image here, the sky was pretty good in the original exposure, but we really wanted to lighten the foreground. Now we did that by using that curve in this part of the adjustment layer and raising that up to make it lighter. But now we can use a brush, and using black paint, which you'll see in a sec, we'll paint out the sky and reduce that effect, so then we'll see underneath. Now brushes are along here on the side here, and we won't go into the details of the brush, but if you double click on the brush, you can have all these different types of brushes. You can adjust the size this way by how many pixels, and the hardness. The hardness is that little edge there, the softness at the edge. So a 0 hardness means it's all feathered, and I think it's 100% hardness is very sharp. So we make sure a couple more settings. We've still got the brush tool selected. We pricked the brush before on the last slide back here on there, so we've picked the brush, we've chosen that one with the blue brackets around it, and then we go here and we make sure our foreground colour is black. Now there's a couple of little adjustments just above here. We can switch our colours from black to white by going through there. If they aren't black or aren't white, we can click on this button here and that'll change your default colours to black and white, and then you can switch in between if you need to. Some of the other brush settings are up the top here. And you can see here we want there's the brush tool, there's the brush we chose before, and it's 300 is the actual size. We move across to the mode. The mode is what's called the blend mode of the brush. It's normal. We want it to be normal. If it's not, normal will be on the top of the list there. The opacity, which is how strong the brush is, it's at 100%, and the flow we want at 100% on this occasion. So now we're ready to paint. Now if you can actually change the size of your panels over here. So what I've done is right clicked on here and gone and changed my panel options for my layers to make them a bit bigger. The little window pops up and you choose a larger thumbnail. So that's right clicking on here, and this little palette pops up, and panel options, you can make the size of your layer. See how it's very small there? Now it becomes big when you choose panel options and choose the right setting. So once it's bigger, we can paint on the picture here with a brush, and you can see what happens here. It starts painting black. So it's good to have a bigger one there to get a preview. So we're just roughly painting in here, and then we get a bit more targeted down the bottom here. You can see there the brush is going through, and you can see now how the sky was whiter and now it's gone. So for here, for instance, we're halfway down here. This corresponds to about there on the picture, and this part is the original the adjustment. This part's the original image. We go to the next slide. Here it's all painted down to the sky, to the mountain range, and below that is the normal image underneath. Sorry, the highlighted image, the curve adjustment. So what we did here with the curves is showing through here because it is white. The black area here is the original file, which is here. So that's the effect of the mask. Now again, we can alt click on the mask, and we can actually paint on it live to fill in these little gaps. It's a little handy little tip there. If you want to paint on that, you just get the brush there and paint on it and fill those little gaps in. Now if we want to go back and see the image again, we can alt click on the mask or hit the little icon there for the eyeball. Once we've got that there, that's basically the finished image. We've kept the original sky by having the black mask here. The foreground we've lightened by that curve, by moving that curve up. We can turn off the layer to see the effect. So there's the layer off, and there it is on. So we can see we've made a considerable difference. We've lightened that foreground. See there it's off, and there's the effect. Okay, and then we would save that image as a PSD file. We do save as a Photoshop PSD file. Probably best to do that or a TIFF. PSD files do keep the layer stack that we have built there with the curve adjustment layer, and the original file, they keep that intact. So if a judge comes back and says, oh, you should really lighten that foreground again, you can go back to that image and go straight to that curve layer and lighten that directly The alternative to that is to flatten the image and save it as a JPEG, and therefore you'd have to go through the whole process again. So good idea to save it with layers, and to do that, save as PSDs. Alright, thanks very much for tuning in, and I hope that helps.